Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a place where you can be, belong, and become the very best version of yourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, thank you, thank you for joining us, becoming part of this conversation. So, again, for many of us, we've begun asking deeper questions about the Bible. Some of us we've done this thing called deconstruction, and because of that, stuff has shifted. And I would argue in some ways it's become even better, even bigger. And so here in this space, we call this sacred space. This is a space where we do the difficult work, right? We ask the difficult questions. We delve really deep into what these messages mean, who the people were that wrote it, all of it. We do that all here. And so, as always, let me remind you below you have these descriptions of how you can help us, right? There's a donation button down below. We also have some descriptions of what we do, who we are, all of that. And of course, the YouTube channel. Please subscribe, hit the little bell. Every time we put up a new video, you'll know. So, moving along, we are talking about Genesis. And I've had so much fun with this. So many people I know, you've said, look, I love the verse by verse study. This has been so much fun just to see where you go with these lines, these words in the Hebrew. This is my joy. And so we are moving through the book of Genesis, this word meaning origins, beginnings, right? And so again, we understand this was not a historical document, not written to. Let me say it this way: this book was not written to give an accurate, precise, detailed description of the tribe of Israel. That was not the point. And so when you read like these different dates and these different time periods of how long people lived, all of that, this is not to be taken literally, right? All of this is a bigger picture. This is oral tradition being told over and over again. And so let me remind you, the people who wrote this, they wrote this in around 587 BC. So 587 BC is an important date for people, Israel, because this is what happened for them. The Babylonian Empire was expanding, it was growing, and they were basically just chewing up every little tribe there was and adding it to the machine that they called Babylon. And so Babylon got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so what they did is they saw this tiny nation, this tiny tribe, nomadic tribe really, of Israel. And they'd established a place, right? They called Jerusalem. They had a temple, they had ritual, they had all of these things. But Babylon comes in, their army, they destroy that city. They take these Jewish people, they destroy their temple, right? We've heard this destroy of the temple many times now. But it is a response to that because they're asking, where's our hope? What happens to our people now that we've lost everything? We've been marched hundreds of miles on feet. Right? We get to a new place, new culture, all these other tribes coming together. It's a melting pot. And so what happens to our people? What happens to the stories that we hold so close? What happens to all the values, right? And so this is the response. And so again, this phrase right here, I want you to remember it. This statement: the Torah is written in response to the fears of assimilation. They are writing so that they can keep all of that oral tradition, all of the ritual. They don't want to lose it because they understand that being a Hebrew means keeping the ritual. It means understanding the depth and the beauty of what it means to be human. It's looking at their idea of the divine a little differently, right? They were monotheistic, not polytheistic. And so this group wanted to hold on to that. They did not want to assimilate, just become another Babylonian. And so that's when we have the Torah compiled. That's when we have the books come together. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's where it comes in. And so again, the poetry, the mythology, the prophetic musings, the prophetic warnings. If we go this direction, this will happen again. All of that is part of what we have there in the Old Testament. The Christian canon, right? Called the Torah if you're a Jew. And so the Torah is a complete narrative of Israel miniaturized through its tellings. So every time we come into a new narrative, anytime we come into interesting details, it's going to be really a description, not of literal history, but a description of Israel. And when we understand that, the whole book of Genesis, it just hums. It makes sense. I would say it comes alive. So enough of that. Let me delve right into Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1. We discussed the last week we met. We discussed how this book, in the very beginning, Israel's God steps into the chaos and begins adding order. Whereas the Babylonian story, Enuma-Elish, their gods step in and they create chaos. But Israel's God steps in, dips his wing in the water, right? The chaos, creates ripples that add and create patterns of order. It's a very different idea of these gods. It's a very different idea of a nation, right? Babylon would say, we only find order through chaos and destruction and violence. Israel would say, no, the way to find life, the way to find order is through love. It's through justice. It's through forgiving your neighbor, loving your enemies, taking care of the widow and the orphan and the stranger within your gates. That's how we find order. It's two very different narratives. Yeah, and so you see it. So again, their gods hovered over, they created chaos. So I gave you this description last time, and I think it's a good one. It's a good metaphor. Again, this idea in Genesis 1 where this God steps into the chaos. Again, it's just like a waiter. It's a busboy. It's busboy God, right? God steps in and he begins separating things and clearing off the table, because the reason we clear off a table is so that it can be used again. And so the idea here is this God steps in and begins to separate things from each other, creating free space so that there might be life again. That's the beautiful picture here in Genesis 1. And so let me read it. Genesis 1, 6 through 8, because that's where we are now. Here we go. And God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the water, and let it be a separation between water and water. And God made the expanse, and it separated between the water and what was below the expanse and the water that was above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and it was evening, and it was morning, a second day." So to us today, we read this and we kind of, oh yeah, that's kind of where the waters came from or whatever. Or it's a mythological story. Whatever you see it, it's important to understand how they viewed the world. Back then, they viewed the world this way. When they looked up, they saw blue. And what is blue, right? Blue, when they would walk around, they would see the streams and the oceans, the lakes. They dip in. It was blue. And so when they looked up, they assumed that that must be another layer of water above. And so at some point, how did the separation become clear? How did the thing become separated? That's where the stories, the oral traditions came in. They believed that their God stepped in and actually created a separation. And in that separation, when this God separated the waters, watch this, when this God separated the waters, some went up here, some went down here. But then in the middle, as you look in the picture there, that's where all of creation begins to happen. But you can't have creation until you've created space, until you've separated the waters. Isn't this fun? I love this stuff. So that's how they viewed the world. And so it's so important to understand that. One rabbi, he says this about the story. He says, the firmament waters, right, the ones above, they were for the ancient people a constant reminder of the wonders above and below. So every time these people looked up and they looked down, they were reminded of how wonderful the world is. To view them as a constant reminder, life is lived in astonishment. So as a Hebrew person, everywhere you go, you see the divine. The divine's everywhere. Everywhere you go, you see wonder, you see beauty, you see astonishment, because you see how just that separation created something so good, something so wonderful, something so awe-inspiring. It's kind of like Job. Job said this in Job 26:11. He said, "The pillars of the heavens trembled the entire first day, and on the second day they were astonished by his rebuke, like a person who stands in astonishment because of the rebuke of the one who frightens him." Again, Job says the whole world trembles and is in awe of how good it is. I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you either went to the Grand Canyon or you saw something just incredible. And what did you do in that moment? For many of us, I think it causes a feeling of smallness. We feel little. And that's what Job is really saying here. He's not saying he's literally scared of this God. No, he's saying, I feel so small. so insignificant at the wonder and the beauty, how big the thing is. I'm in awe of the thing. Another great quote I like is this one. What was wonderful about childhood is that anything in it was a wonder. It was not merely a world full of miracles, it was a miraculous world. I want you to think about when you were small. When you were a child, I've got 3 kids, and I constantly watch as they create and they see new things all around them. And their brains begin to create all these new connections of, oh, that's what this is. Oh, that's what this is. But the world, when you're little, the world's so big. There's so much beauty. There's so much wonder. And so you're constantly asking questions. Let me read this one. A baby's brain. I want you to think about this. A baby's brain is so active during the first months that as many as 1 million new neural connections are formed every second. Like, think about that. Every second, 1 million new connections are made because everything is new. It's like that child who you tell them, don't touch the hot pot. Well, what are they going to do? Not because they're evil. They have a, this degraded soul, blah, 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 origin, sin, whatever. And that's not the point. They touch the thing, not because they're little evil little people, not doing what you said. The child's going to touch the hot pan because they don't know what hot is. Once they experience hot, they learn new connections are formed. For kids, they're constantly learning. And it's kind of sad to me that as we grow older, we stop asking questions. We live less and less in wonder. There's some other interesting things. I was reading this study. In this study, basically they found Dr. Matthias Gruber of the University of California. He found 3 interesting things that happen when the brain is engaged, and these kids are learning. So let me share with you 3 interesting findings that this study showed. Number 1, when the brain is engaged, it causes other areas of the brain to engage as well. So curiosity may put the brain in like a state that basically allows it to learn and retain other kinds of information. Interesting, right? So I could be working with my hands doing something like woodworking, and all of a sudden I might move or shift or use some kind of tool. And before I know it, I'm not just thinking about that. I'm thinking about string theory and physics. And that string theory and physics might remind me of like Mozart, right? Mozart. And before I know it, I'm singing Mozart, I'm humming Mozart tunes, and I'm woodworking, and I'm thinking about string theory. And that's what happens when the brain begins to ask connections. Your brain just lights up. The whole thing lights up. It's so exciting. Another interesting finding they had. The investigators found that when curiosity is stimulated, again, there's increased activity in the brain circuit related to reward. So you ever have that feeling where once you do something and you feel good about it, it's like this moment where you basically, it's a dopamine release, right? I feel good. So when curiosity happens, when you begin asking questions, you go down the rabbit hole, you begin Googling, researching all of that, your brain gets excited. Yeah, it gets excited and it causes you to be happy. Yeah, what if some of us are not feeling great daily because we're just unaware of the wonder around us. We're just not asking questions anymore. Like, what if that could be part of bringing you to a more happier life? Yeah, kind of fun, right? Last thing they found. Third, the team discovered that when curiosity motivated learning, there was increased activity in the hippocampus, which is like the brain region that's important for like forming new memories. So when you ask questions, new information, new memories, all of this is able to be stored easier, and you begin to basically feel that reward again. But now you've got more and more space for that to happen. Really fascinating, right? Again, wonder, curiosity, it's actually really good for your gray matter. It actually causes you to feel happy, to get smarter, basically, is what the last slide said. It causes so many beautiful things to take place. And I love that the Bible starts with, hey, look at the wonder. Learn to live in wonder. Ask questions. Learn to live in curiosity. And so seeing wonder actually strengthens not only our soul, not only our spiritual journey, but our actual gray matter. Yeah, so cool. And so that's why, again, I love the Psalms. He says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Ashley Smith says this: life is full of beauty. Notice it. Notice the bumblebee. Notice the small child, the smiling faces. Smell the rain, feel the wind, live your life to the fullest potential, and fight for your dreams. I think that is such a great quote. Learn to live in wonder. And so, as always, when we go through this new series, we're going to ask you to take basically work with us. Do something engaging that will make this come alive. And so we're going to ask that you take it home. And so the number one thing I want you to do this week, after you hear this, I'd love for you to do this. Take a walk outside. Yeah, some of you have been stuck inside, right? Some of us live indoors. We never get out. Put your shoes on, right? Put your shoes and socks on, or your sandals, whatever it is. Get out there. And I want you just to begin being aware of the five senses you have, right? Think of the world around you as you walk. What is it? What do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What are you tasting? What are you feeling? Become aware of all of those different senses, because I think sometimes those senses will often guide us to new information, new ideas, new wonder. But often we're only living on one or two of them. Yeah, let those senses come alive. Take notice of it. And then the next part I'd love for you to do is this. I'd love for you, after you take that little walk, come back, take a seat on your nice comfy couch, your favorite lazy boy, whatever it is. Find that space and read Psalm 91. Reflect on where you are seeing beauty and wonder all around you today. Read that psalm, see what happens to your soul, but also your gray matter. I think you'll find the two begin to work together. It's beautiful. So Genesis 1:6-8. And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the water. Let there be a separation between water and water. And God made the expanse, and it separated between the water that was below and the expanse of the water that was above in the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and it was evening, and it was morning the second day. Man, is this fun. I hope you enjoyed this. As always, we'd love for you to work with us. Please consider donating, supporting this mission that we do. It's very easy. Go to ethos-church.org/donate. Give that tax-deductible donation. You're going to give it somewhere, right? Why not participate with us sharing these messages to the world? We think they're that good. Another thing we'd love to remind you is the first and the third of every month, we're doing Ethos Living Rooms. And so we've created these Zoom discussion meetings where we basically talk about deconstruction, reconstruction. We'll move through different narratives of the Bible, and we'll do it all live. And I'm there to help kind of move the conversation along, ask questions. It's so much fun. Love to have you join us. And as always, subscribe. Hit that bell button. Everyone, I love you. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great week. Talk to you soon.